Thanks very much, Fred. Well, we are just about to disembark the spirit of Tasmania here in Devonport. We've got 4 weeks in this magical place they call the Apple Isle of Australia. This week we'll be checking out Port Arthur and also a very special polywaffle with Andrew Wilkie from Election Day. It's the Couches Tour of Tasmania. We call it Couchaway and it begins now. 60 kilometres southeast of Hobart is the infamous penal settlement of Port Arthur. Named after Governor George Arthur, it was initially set up as a timber camp in 1830, but being surrounded by water, rugged landforms and forests, it made for an ideal prison from 1833. Billed as inescapable, much like the later Alcatraz in the US, Port Arthur operated until 1853. Colin is our guide. He's going to show us around. Colin, what are we looking at in the background here?
Well, what you're actually looking at, the main building is the penitentiary, which is the main prison block. It's where convicts are eating and sleeping. Just here you've got the military guard tower and powder magazine. The headland is called Point Puer. It's spelled P-U-E-R, which is Latin for youth or boy, and was named as such in 1834 when it was established as a juvenile prison. The average age of a boy convict out there was about 12 to 15, but the youngest were only 9.
Colin, we've got a mental asylum behind us. Tell us a little bit about that.
It was the last major construction of Port Arthur. They built it here in 1868, and things had deteriorated so much that they actually had to bring labour in to build that place. So the building just down here is the Paupers and Invalids Depot, and they were the men suffering the physical effects of old age. And there were men here who were in their 70s and 80s. And of course, the building next to the asylum was the separate prison, which to my mind was the most infamous type of punishment here. And the way of doing this was to lock you in a cell 23 hours a day in strict and absolute silence, strict and absolute isolation. And for 1 hour a day they would take you out of the cell to give you exercise in a yard by yourself, and you had to wear a mask over your face.
Well, night has fallen here at Port Arthur and it's time for a ghost tour by kerosene candlelight. I'm worried.
Matt, what are you doing?
Ghost tour, yeah?
Yeah, but we've had electricity down here since the 1950s.
Oh.
We actually do the tours by candlelight, kinda, but there's street lights and things. It's not too bad.
Okay, all right, well, you're going to show me around?
I am. I'm Todd, the ghost tour guide. Been here about 14 years now. I've seen 5 ghosts in that time. And let's just say that if I wasn't being paid, I wouldn't be here.
Me either. Let's go.
Good luck.
All right, Todd, clearly we're hamming this up. So let's fade the music out. Now tell me, what are ghosts?
What most people think ghosts are lost souls. They're people like you and I who've lived and died and not gone into the light. People don't go into the light mostly because they've got unfinished business, which means they've got something they need to do.
Now, Todd, there are no actors portraying ghosts here.
No. We have a very strict policy that we don't use holograms, special effects or anyone jumping out of cupboards. That doesn't mean occasionally a person on the tour with school groups doesn't jump ahead and hide behind a tree, but it does mean that we don't deliberately try and set people up to see things that aren't there, because this is a very serious historic site. Our reputation is taken very seriously by the historic staff, and we actually have to have at least 3 people experience roughly the same thing in roughly the same place and then write it down, fill out a form, before we are allowed to use those occurrences on the ghost tours. A Deputy Police Commissioner of Tasmania at the time was here. He and a guy who was arranging a kind of a show, not really a tattoo but similar, saw a redcoat standing on the wall above us where there's no sort of, well, it was on the wall and they thought, well, okay, it's just a guy standing on the wall. They had Scottish pipers in red uniforms. He said, and so one of them called out to the technician and said, "Will you get that man off the wall before he injures himself?" Because they'd called to the redcoat and he didn't answer. And the technician looked up and sort of went, "What man?" And so they're both saying, "The guy in the big, in the red uniform right above you, above your head." And he's looking up saying, "Well, I'm sorry, I really can't see anybody." So we're not quite sure what was going on, but apparently the redcoat then walked off the wall and marched to the other side of the building, across thin air where the third floorboards would have been, like he was walking on the floorboards that were there when he was alive. Did an about face, walked back to his starting position, did another about face, came to attention, and vanished into thin air and was gone.
It's certainly one of the most infamous penal colonies, but one that has played such a significant part in our history. The Port Arthur Historical Site is a must-see destination when you come to Tassie. There are many more stories to be told by the guides both in the daytime and at night, so make sure you jump online, check it out and add it to your itinerary. Just outside of Port Arthur is the Tasmanian Devil Conservation Park, and it's lovely established. They've reclaimed a forest, and John, the owner, is with me. John, tell us a little bit about the park.
We established the park 35 years ago. It's the oldest wildlife centre in Tasmania. And now we're right in the thick of, along with a lot of other people, trying to save the endangered Tasmanian devil. The park we have here is basically an old apple orchard where we've got rid of all the orchard, rid of all the sprays, rid of all the nasties, and we've turned it into a native botanic garden as well, featuring Tasmania's wonderful endemic flora. In the midst of that, we now are able to attract honey eaters and wild rosellas, and so the birds and the other wildlife's coming back into this area. Unlike most other wildlife parks, we've taken down the boundary fences and we're encouraging the local wildlife to come in. So we do have wildlife here among our displays, and the specific ones are the Tasmanian devils.
You were mentioning just off camera before that the facial tumour disease that is haunting the devils. South of Dunalley, it's becoming not as rife and it's almost clear. Is that right?
There is now no Tasmanian devil facial tumour disease south of Dunalley. Now that's the famous town where sadly the centre of the recent bushfires. But there's a canal there, and that's to be used as a natural barrier. So the idea is we're trying to create a fortress in this isolated region down here on Tasman Peninsula. Now there's a remnant population of wild devils here. They're all healthy. Ours are healthy in the park.
It's certainly a massive effort, but a very worthy cause. Hopefully the Tasmanian Devil Conservation Park in Port Arthur can help save the Tassie Devil. And finally, one of the many great activities you have to do when you are here, it's a Tasman Island cruise. Pennicott Wilderness Journeys took us aboard while we were there, and even with Liam's lack of seaworthiness, there were some great sights as we raced out into the Southern Ocean. The 3-hour cruise is just $125 per person and comes with a very special overall to keep your camera and clothes dry. Check out their website for full details and be sure to book your adventure cruise. Our accommodation this week was the fantastic self-contained cabins at Stewart's Bay Lodge. Under new management the day we arrived, the quality and tranquility in the area are second to none. Individual cabins set amongst natural forest and right on the water's edge.